Hey guys, tonight we're traveling way back, like 5,000 years back, to a place where the rivers ran thick with silt, the summers were unreasonably sweaty, and the only thing colder than your neighbor's gossip was the beer. Welcome to ancient Sumer, where the wheel had just been invented, nobody wore pants, and receipts weren't digital. They were made of mud. You're about to slip into a world where beer wasn't just a drink. It was currency. It was religion. It was breakfast. And trust me, if you think losing a receipt nowadays is annoying, try doing it when it's written on a piece of sun-baked clay the size of a Pop-Tart. You're not going to make it through. A day in Sumer without accidentally getting into an argument over who drank what, when, and how many shekels of barley it was worth. Spoiler, you definitely won't win. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge along the banks of the Tigris, your feet sunk in soft, warm mud that smells faintly of rotten celery. The sky is the color of dusty honey, and everything, from your goat leather sandals to your flax robe, is coated in a thin layer of dried silt, like you're unintentionally cosplaying as a living clay statue. Ahead, the city of Uruk rises, like a whisper from history's midday nap. Mud brick walls, lanky palm trees, and the angry shouts of someone who just spilled the temple of Ninkasi's precious beer. You're not a merchant, not a priest, just an ordinary Sumerian citizen. Your daily routine involves growing barley, watching irrigation canals, debating over philosophy in the form of, "I'm sure I gave you 2 jars, not 1, and occasionally helping out at the city warehouse if someone gets heat stroke or just too drunk to stand upright. Today is ration day. You and dozens of others shuffle into the wide courtyard of the granary. There's a long line, a crude clay table, and a young official named Enki Lum, whose fingernails are filed into wedge shapes for easier writing. He looks tired and a little mean, the kind of guy who blames clerical errors on the positions of the stars. You hear the murmuring around you. "I swear it's already recorded. 3 measures of grain, 1 of beer. Wrote it down 2 days ago." You're dreaming. I've only got a record from 2 days ago that says 2 measures of grain and 1 of barley water. No, that was 2 days ago. Everything revolves around these tiny fired clay lumps called tokens, early receipts. They were sealed in clay envelopes, stamped with round seals bearing bulls' heads, thick beards, or cups. What started as pictograms eventually became the first writing system humanity ever used. You watch as Enki Lum pulls out a clay tablet marked with 3 lines and a circle, meaning 3 jars of beer. He eyes you with half a glance and asks in a flat voice, "Name?" You say it. "Number of jars last time?" 3. "Got a receipt?" "Oats." "I think so. Might have fallen in the fishbone pile." Enki Lum frowns. No receipt, no beer. You're pushed to the back of the line. That's when you notice. The woman in front of you is holding a tiny clay tablet like it's a rare bird's egg. On it is a sequence of symbols, a person, 3 slashes, and a tilted cup. A receipt. You sigh? Another breakfastless day. It's okay. You have a plan. This afternoon, you'll return for a selective recovery operation, which is a fancy way of saying digging through mud near the donkey pen for the lost clay tablet. You're pretty sure you left it somewhere close to the old ash pit. As you trudge back home, the murmurs behind you echo on, the sound of a civilization trying to run its life on beer and desperately trying not to get scammed. You stop by a little roadside stall, a place selling delicacies like flame-grilled malt cakes, salted goat, and, of course, warm beer. The shopkeeper is an old woman with bulging eyes and a suspiciously luxurious mustache you've never dared ask about. She silently hands you a cup, no questions, no receipt. You take a sip. It's bitter, thick, and slightly slimy, like a soup for someone who's given up on life. You may not have a receipt. You may not get your rations from the granary. But you do have something more valuable. A story. One more day in the heart. Of Uruk, one lost clay tablet, and one sip of beer strong enough to make you forget the sun, the dust, and even the fact that Enkilim keeps forgetting your name. You wake up before the sun has had a chance to dry the dew clinging to the palm leaves. If there's such a thing as a good night's sleep in Uruk, it's probably just 3 uninterrupted hours without mosquito bites or your neighbors. Snoring like a water buffalo, you stretch, your joints cracking like underbaked bricks, and begin the day. But instead of heading to the fields or back to the granary, you turn into a narrow alley toward a low house with thick walls made of straw-mixed mud and a flat roof, a place where you hope to meet someone who can help with your receipt problem. His name is Sangamidu. He's not a priest nor a merchant. He's a receipt scribe, a rising profession, kind of like a modern notary, but more poetic. Sangamidu lives in a room cluttered with dry clay tablets, reed styluses, and palm fibers, ribbons. You're not entirely sure why a goat is pacing back and forth in there. Possibly an assistant? Lost your receipt again? He asks, still carefully carving a reed stylus. You nod, ducking to avoid the web of hanging cords that support the writing boards from the ceiling. Beer? Yeah. Temple or civilian? Civilian. 3 jars, 2 days ago, around noon. He nods, pulls out a lump of fresh clay, and begins to inscribe. You watch. And for the first time, you begin to see the artistry in something you once thought was just accounting. The slashes, the circles, the tiny bullhead symbols, they form a silent language. One that doesn't just say someone received beer, but when, from whom, where, even whether it was brewed with pure malt or mixed with dried radish. Don't laugh, that really happened. And according to Sangamidu, it led to a major lawsuit over bad beer. You ask, has anyone ever forged a receipt? He looks up, smirks. What do you think? Someone once sculpted fake tokens with imitation markings, dried them, and snuck them into the temple's vault during a rainstorm, hoping the wet would mix the real and the fake together. Unfortunately, it was sunny that day. You chuckle. Not a full laugh. More like a soft breath. The kind of reaction you have when you hear something ridiculous that still makes total sense. In Sumer. Historians still debate, Sangha says, squinting slightly as he draws the final line, whether this token and receipt system was truly the beginning of writing. Some say writing began with stories, with songs, but there's a lot of evidence that the first thing humans ever recorded was who owed whom how much beer. You glance at the tablet he's just finished. It's round and flat, sealed, with 3 small symbols neatly lined up. It kind of looks like a yawning smiley face. Don't let it dry too fast, Sangha warns, handing it to you. Keep it in the shade. If you can, bury it in dry sand until you need to present it, and don't hand it to anyone who's hungry. They might try to chew it. You thank him, feeling as relieved as someone being handed their ID back after a 3 millennium. Wait, as you leave Sangha's house, you see a group gathering outside, arguing about the rations for a soldier named Gishrum, who demanded extra beer for helping build the temple gate. An old woman hisses, "He lifted 1 brick and dropped it," someone else adds. "Better than your son. He only lifted the shadow of a brick." You pass them by, the fresh receipt tucked safely in a cloth pouch, silently hoping it doesn't rain today, or at the very least, that no one drops it into the lentil stew pot. You recall the last time you had to defend a lost receipt. It was a scorching day, so hot the clay turned soft like dough. You placed the tablet on a stone out in the yard and forgot. A dog came by and ate it. No one believed you. Honestly, you're not even sure you believe it. Under the shade of a palm, you look up at the coarse clay walls of Uruk, where tablets from 3,000 years ago are still preserved. Order forms, staff rosters, beer distribution logs, offerings to the gods. And you think, Civilization didn't begin with poetry, but with a very human question. Do I have proof of that? The air grows heavy. A passerby squints at the tablet in your hand and says with a laugh, "Careful, these days kids like to collect clay for toys. I once caught them using my receipt for a game of tablet toss." You grip the clay tighter, slipping into the shade. And then, as always, a warm gust drifts by, carrying the scent of maybe malt, maybe goat dung, possibly both. Certainly. Here's the full English translation, preserving the quiet humor and thoughtful tone of the original. You return to the storage hall in the afternoon when the heat has slumped like a tired ox flopped onto the ground. The sky over Uruk is now the color of aged wine, and your shadow stretches out twice your height. In your hand is the clay receipt, still faintly warm from the sun, and in your heart is something close to pride, as if you've just completed a grand mission, proving that you drank beer legally. At the warehouse gate, the storekeeper is chewing on something. Could be dried figs or bark. With him, the line between food and decoration is always a bit blurry. "Receipt?" he asks, without even looking up. You hold out the clay. "Token?" Like it's an ATM card. He takes it, turns it over a few times, and gives a curt nod. "Yep. Transaction confirmed. Go on in." You step inside, welcomed by the rare coolness of thick walls. The storehouse has no windows, just a few small holes, mostly for the mice. You're fairly certain you saw one wearing something like a mask, possibly a priest mouse. In the corner, the big beer jar from the other day is still there, though. Now it's more than half empty. The smell of malt lingers, mixed with old wood, and something slightly off. Maybe someone added coriander this time, the experiment of the week. You pour yourself a cup, then sit beside a low shelf. The wall across from you is where the old receipts are stored. Hundreds of clay tablets stacked like dried fish. Some are incomplete, just a few scribbles, maybe draft receipts, or maybe written by someone who drank too much and forgot everything. You recall hearing a story about a merchant named Ibizaza who once tried to write a receipt using fruit juice. Why? For the scent. The result? No one could read a thing, and his cat licked it clean. Since then, people in Uruk say, if you want to be remembered, don't use mango. Others were more creative. There was an apprentice named Lugal Tur who disliked standard markings and invented a new system of pictographic receipts. Instead of writing 3 jars of beer, he drew 3 people sprawled out with swollen bellies. Message, they've had enough. At first, everyone laughed. But then a high priest saw the drawing and said, symbolic, philosophical. After that, Lugal Tur became Sumer's first beer carving artist. He even held an exhibition. With pastries, you rest your chin on your hand, cup in the other, eyes half closed. A breeze slips through a wall crack, carrying the rhythmic sound of footsteps outside. Probably some builders walking past, arguing about whether to use square or triangular bricks for the new city gate. You hear them bickering, square bricks stack easier, but triangle bricks ward off the wind god. The wind god only blows on dumb things, like your hat. You're not sure who wins. A cat jumps onto the shelf across from you, stares at you, then at your beer, as if about to negotiate. It meows softly. You offer it some oat bread. It refuses. Clearly it has refined tastes. You glance back at your used receipt. It will now go into the archive system. In a large jar in the corner, they stack those clay tablets like a library, with no borrowers. And if anyone ever needs to verify something, say, whether you really were given beer on the Wednesday of the second moon, in the 3rd season after the big rains, they'll have to dig through it like some prehistoric puzzle. Historians are still debating, you recall Sangamidu's words, whether this counts as the world's first administrative office. Some say no, it's just storage. Others say it's protocol. But to me, it's proof that humanity has long loved confirmation. Makes sense. In a world without printers, without Google Drive, without a group chat to verify what everyone drank yesterday, a hardened piece of dirt with some odd symbols was your best defense of personal honor. You lean back against the earthen wall. The sun outside has mellowed. Inside, the sound fades into near silence, just a cat scratching its back against the receipt jar, and the slow, steady breathing of the storekeeper who is now dozed off. You think, isn't it strange? In a grand civilization like Sumer, with its hanging gardens, towering temples, and copied texts on astronomy, the thing people remembered most clearly was, I received beer. And you don't want anyone to forget that, especially not yourself. Sure. Here's the full English translation of your scene, keeping the gentle humor, atmosphere, and subtle wit of the original. Outside, the sun is beginning to give way to a thin golden dust, like mist, except this mist is mule-delivered, and suspiciously slow. You leave the storehouse, still holding your empty beer cup, and begin walking down the baked brick road toward the central market of Uruk. At dusk, the market is a swirl of scents, noise, and bizarre deals. You pass a man selling bottled shade, essentially empty clay jars, but he swears by the god Enki. Just open it at noon, and it'll feel 2 degrees cooler. In one corner, a crowd has gathered around a public inscription board. It's the new price list for wheat, camels, and, you blink, custom clay receipt engraving fees. What does that mean? A young man next to you explains, now there's a service for personalized receipt carving, like you want to say you got 2 jars of beer, but you want it to be written like a love poem. You chuckle. Do people really write love poems on receipts? He nods. There was this guy named Ishkur, once gave his lover a tablet that said, I received 3 measures of grain, but my heart belongs to you. Whether his lover appreciated it is unclear. Modern scholars, however, remain deeply confused. You pause at a small stall, where a woman is pressing symbols into a clay tablet by hand. Each mark is slow, deliberate, like writing a diary. On the table are many wedge-shaped signs, but also some odd little drawings, a laughing cow, a tree with legs, a flying beer cup, custom orders. You ask? She nods. Today someone asked for a tablet to give his mother that says, don't forget to buy onions. So I drew an onion with wings. You think to say something, but instead just nod. Somehow you like the feeling here. In an ancient civilization where someone still wants to carve a joke into clay, while you, in the modern day, set reminders on apps and still forget your passwords. You turn into a smaller alley leading to the administrative quarter. This is where priests and scribes work, people who live among tablets and codes, math, and the occasional ridiculous dispute. Once, you remember, 2 men argued over a receipt that read, I delivered 2 jars of oil, 3 buckets of honey. The other man insisted, no, it was 3 jars of oil, 2 buckets of honey. In the end, the scribe had to ask, then who drank the extra 2 buckets of honey? The answer, a cow, and it was not pleased. You step into a small room where a scribe is working. His table is covered in tablets, papyrus scrolls, and a cloth with what looks like bean paste. Hello, he says without looking up. Here, to check a receipt? You nod. I want to see one from last moon. Says I received beer from brewery number 2. He rummages. His hands move like wind. His eyes know instantly which tablets are old and which have been nibbled by mice. Finally, he pulls one out and gently blows off the dust. Here, your name's on it. Also a drawing. A person trying to balance 2 jars of beer. You scratch your head. I don't remember asking for that image. He chuckles. The engraver got playful. You thank him and leave, your mind echoing with a thought. These people, with hands full of dirt and minds full of stories, had invented not just the first storage system, but also the first clay-based jokes. And then, as if on cue, someone yells from behind, has anyone seen my tablet, the one with me hugging a rooster? Another voice shouts back, you put it in the love poem jar. You can't help but laugh. In Uruk, the difference between I bought a chicken and I love you might just be a single misplaced wedge. Historians still debate whether the Sumerian clay tablet system was truly an invention of bureaucratic control, or just a long chain of impulsive notes from a culture that loved beer, chickens, and a kind of accuracy that was approximate at best. You think maybe it was both. And maybe that's exactly what made Sumer not just the birthplace of writing, but the birthplace of the stories you're now starting to dream about. Certainly, here's the full English translation of your beautifully written scene, preserving the poetic tone, light humor, and reflective atmosphere. You stop by the banks of the Euphrates, where the sunset begins to spread across the water like a red carpet rolled out for wandering thoughts. The air cools, but still carries the warm scent of baked clay, the kind of smell that only exists in a city built entirely of mud. You sit on a stone slab, listening to the steady splash of oars from a small boat filled with empty jars on its way to fetch beer. The rower begins to sing, the words unclear, but the rhythm makes you want to breathe more slowly. Maybe songs like that were how ancestors once passed messages before they ever learned to carve letters. Suddenly, a child darts past you, clutching a still damp clay tablet. He almost trips, then turns and grins. Mama told me to bring this. To the scribe, I wrote, I was good all day, but she doesn't believe me. You raise an eyebrow? You carved it yourself? He nods. I used the handle of a spoon. Pretty, right? You look at the tablet, seeing a row of crooked signs, as if someone tried to write Latin left-handed in the dark. But there's one clear image, a laughing donkey. You burst out laughing. Pretty sure that'll get approved. The child runs off, leaving you with a thought. Why did the Sumerians go through so much trouble to create a way to store everything? Was it really that necessary? The answer, you think, lies farther down the path, where you once witnessed a major meeting between city officials and the heads of barley farms. A dusty room more crowded than the fish market, with one unspoken rule. Whoever had the tablet, proving their side, won. Once a farm owner leapt to his feet, waving a tablet in the air. I delivered all 80 bushels. It's carved right here. Another man jumped in. No, that's last year's tablet. This year you delivered 78. A priest quietly added, the symbol last year was a 3-legged cow. This year, it's a 4-legged cow. Clearly, this year. Everyone nodded in agreement. You're not sure what's stranger, that a 3-legged cow became a symbol of time, or that no one questioned it. In this society, time wasn't just days or months. It was the shape of animals. There was a year of the one-eyed chicken, a year of the goat-jumping rope. A calendar system both convenient and hilarious, and utterly baffling for archaeologists thousands of years later. You recall once seeing a special set of tablets, a full record of beer orders for a royal wedding. One read, 25 large jars for musicians, excluding horn player who avoids beer. Another, 15 jars for the king's mother-in-law. Specify good jars, no added water. And the last, carved with a shaky hand, 1 jar for the tablet carver, a bonus, because my hand hurts. You think of the people who created this system. They didn't just want to count, they wanted to be heard, to be trusted, to be seen inside a story, whether it was about beer deals or royal weddings. And then you recall a little-known fact, the very first clay tablet ever discovered. It doesn't record some grand history, but simply still owed 3 measures of grain, meaning everything began with debt. Historians still debate whether writing was invented to tell epic tales, or just to make sure someone actually returned the jar they borrowed. You, however, are certain of one thing. The Sumerians believed memory was more easily lost than a mule carrying beer. So they wrote it all down. The sun has now fully set. On the river, the beer boat glimmers under torchlight. You close your eyes, listening to the oars, the wind, and the voice of a distant civilization still whispering through. Baked clay. I remember I gave you 3 jars.